Next on NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman.
I want to say the reason I'm doing this has everything to do with that ranching community and the people who would be impacted by the use of eminent domain.
The Colorado state government takes a stand against the use of eminent domain. Also, we'll hear from the Food and Drug Administration about how they're handling the animal cloning debate. Plus, early summer is a great time to manage the health of your herd. We'll have tips from Fort Dodge Animal Health.
And now, NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman with your host, Susie Ross.
Hello, I'm Susie Ross. Thanks for watching Cattleman to Cattleman. We begin our cattle industry news this week with discovery of another BSE case in Canada. It involves a 5-year-old dairy cow in British Columbia. It remains to be seen how this latest case will affect USDA's proposal to expand live cattle imports from Canada. That proposal would allow entry of cattle born after March 1999. In comments filed back in March, NCBA raised questions over using 1999 as Canada's effective feed ban date. Several of Canada's BSE cases have occurred in animals born much later than 1999. NCBA also called for permanent identification of all cattle imported from Canada through harvest. With the recent concern about the industrial chemical melamine being found in pet food as well as hog and poultry feed, it's important for cattle producers to maintain science-based feeding practices that are followed by cattle producers around the country. The Beef Quality Assurance Program provides multiple guidelines for feedstuffs. For more information, head to cattlemantocattleman.org. Farmers and ranchers across Colorado call it a win for agriculture. Earlier this month, the state's governor signed a bill into law barring the U.S. military from using eminent domain to seize land in the southeastern corner of the state. The U.S. Army wants to expand its current military training facility near the southeastern Colorado town of Kim for use by troops from Fort Carson. That's the Army's mountain post in Colorado Springs. The area of interest, as it is called, is home to farms and ranches, as well as petrified dinosaur tracks and petroglyphs, or rock drawings, that are thousands of years old. In Denver, Colorado Governor Bill Ritter signed into law a bill that prohibits the Army from seizing the land. Ranchers and farmers from across Colorado travel to the Capitol building to celebrate their victory, but they say they know all too well their fight is just beginning.
We know the battle is not over. It'll have to continue, and we would appreciate your support in the future.
And we're proud of our state congressional politicians for stepping up and saying no. You know, that we're making a big statement, and they're making a big statement by, telling the federal people, this isn't right.
The Army wants to train thousands of Fort Carson troops on the land. It already owns some 200,000 plus acres in the area. The ranchers in the area have formed a coalition to oppose the proposed expansion. For more, head to cattlemantocattleman.org. Boxed beef prices started off the year on a high note, but now they're in a slump. Should cattlemen be concerned? We have more in this week's Market Watch.
Market Watch, brought to you by Pfizer Animal Health.
Joining us is Dwayne Lenz of Cattle Facts. Welcome back, Dwayne. Good to have you.
Thanks, Susie. It's good to be back.
Good. Boxed beef prices hit a 2-year high a few weeks ago, but they have fallen back since then. Isn't that unusual for this time of year?
It is a little bit unusual. Typically, prices will move from a winter low into a spring high. Now, normally, if you look at a 5 or 10 year seasonal, that high will occur sometime mid to late May. Now, that can occur at any point in time, though last year it occurred in June. This year, it looks like we had our highs in April.
So if we don't see that springtime bump in prices, should that be a concern for cattlemen?
Well, we're always like to see prices go up as long as they can, as high as they can, and stay there. That said, prices will typically move from a spring high into a summertime low as consumption patterns change. Now, we think that even though prices are down a little bit and you always drift lower into summer, we can hold these prices into May or June. It's actually quite positive for prices this summer for cattle because we're starting off at such a high level.
The Choice Select spread is something that you also keep a close eye on. Can you explain the spread and why it's important to cattle producers?
Yeah, a lot of people watch that spread, and simply put, that's just the price of boxes that contain choice beef, and that can be loins, rounds, chucks, ribs, versus what the beef that select boxes are bringing, the boxes of select beef are bringing. The difference of those two is the spread. So if choice boxes are bringing $165 a hundredweight, selects at $155 a hundredweight, that's a $10 choice select spread. I think a lot of people view it and watch it closely because it's a pretty good gauge of what's going on in the industry. You know, what the consumers want. What is our customers telling us? They want more choice, more select product. If they want the more choice, what are we producing? How much are they willing to pay for it versus what they're willing to pay for select? We also have a lot of people out there that are selling cattle out of feedlots now on some kind of a carcass or grid basis. And when that happens, then if they get they're selling a choice yield grade 2 carcass, they're going to get this price, select yield grade 3, a lower price, and that gets sent from the consumers down to the cow-calf seed stock operator. And that's the signal we've been getting sent. Let's produce a choice beef. It's made for a wide choice select spread. That's what the industry continues to watch.
Well, I'll tell you what people really want, Dwayne, is to get the grills out and fire them up. You've got us in the mood.
Let's do it. Buy some steaks and have a party.
Absolutely. Dwayne, always a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll have you again in the future.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks. For more from Cattle Facts, visit cattle-facts.com. In this week's Cattlemen's Capital Concerns, an interview from Washington, D.C. with the Food and Drug Administration's Stephen Sundloff. You may have seen him in the news lately with all the attention on pet food recalls. Sundloff is the director of the FDA's Center for Veterinary Medicine. The center regulates the manufacture and distribution of food additives and drugs given to animals. Cattleman to Cattleman's Jim Witt has more.
Cattlemen's Capital Concerns, brought to you by Fort Dodge Animal Health, makers of Cydectin Poron and Triangle Vaccines.
Dr. Sundloff, who visited with cattle producers at NCBA's Washington office, has the authority to approve new animal drugs and food additives. He talked to producers about one of the latest FDA issues, assessing the safety of cloned animals in food production.
There's a lot of consumer concern about cloning, largely what they've learned from science fiction. So we undertook the task of really evaluating the safety, that if there were any concerns that cloning might introduce something unsafe into the food supply.
After extensive study and scientific review, FDA issued a draft risk assessment confirming the safety of cloned food.
And in the end, what we determined was that cloning doesn't introduce anything unsafe into the food supply, that the animals are generally very healthy, they produce healthy offspring, and that we consider cloning to be just another assisted reproductive technology.
Most of today's consumers grow up far from the farm and sometimes have trouble understanding how food production innovations benefit them.
Cloning actually is a very beneficial technology because those animals that produce the highest quality meat, for instance, are the ones that will be genetically cloned. And so consumers ultimately will have access to much more uniform beef.
Sundloff says some consumers are calling for cloned food to be labeled.
We are having this debate in the public now whether or not products should be labeled. We believe that since they are not any different than normal food on the supermarket shelves, that they should not require labeling, because that gives people the wrong impression often that there is something different about this, and in reality there is nothing different.
Sundloff encourages producers to let people know the facts about cloning.
It's a good idea for spokespeople to get out there and start really talking about this and trying to reassure the public that they should not be concerned, that it actually will make their lives better.
This is Jim Witt for NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman.
This month, NCBA submitted comments to FDA's Center for Veterinary Medicine on animal cloning. The comments are based on NCBA member policy. NCBA supports the development of cloning technology as another assisted reproduction tool, but is also encouraging companies and producers to participate in the voluntary ban of cloned animals from the food supply until FDA issues its final decision. Early summer is a critical time to evaluate the health program for your cattle. Next, how you can protect the health of your entire herd. Plus, we'll take a closer look at how researchers are adding value to the beef carcass. But first, here's a look at this week's market summary provided by Cattle Facts.
There ain't no bugs on me. There ain't no bugs on me. There may be bugs on some of you mugs, but there ain't no bugs on me.
Canine Advantix is the one that repels and kills disease-spreading fleas, ticks, and mosquitoes. Frontline Plus doesn't repel and isn't effective against mosquitoes. So ask your veterinarian for Canine Advantix, the one that repels and kills.
Yeah, there may be bugs on some of you mugs, but there ain't no bugs on me.
Purina's wind and rain minerals are research tested and field proven to provide balanced mineral nutrition essential for cattle health, growth, and reproduction. They're highly palatable so cattle consume what they need when they need it. And wind and rain minerals special formulation resists the elements so they won't blow out of the feeder and maintain their palatability even if they've been wet. Wind and rain cattle minerals from Purina Mills, building better cattle.
In 1874, an innovation changed the beef industry forever. It was called barbed wire, and it brought an end to open range grazing and began a whole new era of cattle management. Today, there's another breakthrough innovation changing the beef industry. It's called Draxxin, and it's one more way Pfizer Animal Health is working with veterinarians and cattlemen to open up a whole new era in animal health. To learn more about Draxxin, talk to your veterinarian.
Welcome back to Cattleman to Cattleman. The health of your herd is important for your animals and for your bottom line. Recently, Cattleman to Cattleman's Todd McCartney caught up with Dr. Kenton Morgan from Fort Dodge Animal Health to learn more about health protocols for the entire herd.
With spring calving comes a lot of work. Feeding, checking cows, and babysitting those first calf heifers. And after a full dose of this, we begin thinking ahead about better weather and greener pastures. But that's good, because we also need to be thinking about those health management practices that are needed before we go to summer grass. This is good timing to visit with Dr. Kenton Morgan, Fort Dodge Animal Health, about preventative measures that we can do with our cattle in the spring. Let's visit. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Todd. First thing that producers need to think about this time of year is to go in with their veterinarian, sit down and lay out a nice program that works best for their management as well as their cattle. And what we'd want to do today is just talk about some real broad general guidelines and have our producers understand that this does not substitute for them talking to their veterinarian.
Gotcha. Let's begin with the calves and their vaccination program for the spring.
Well, with the calves, one of the first things many producers will consider is to give them a clostridial vaccine before turnout. And this is the typical 7-way or 8-way blackleg shot, as referred to by many of the producers. Clostridial diseases can cause us some serious problems, and so that's one thing we want to consider. Another thing we can consider are the viral diseases, such as IBR, BVD, which we think about reproductive problems in adult animals, but in calves, BVD can be an underlying problem to respiratory disease, and of course IBR is associated with respiratory disease in calves, as well as it can contribute to eye irritation or inflammation that can lead to pink eye later in the summer season.
Dr. Morgan, shed some light on the discussion of modified live versus killed vaccines.
Well, fortunately for producers, we have good products of both. We have good killed products and good modified live viral products. And this is a good discussion, again, that the producer needs to have with their veterinarian to see what works best for their operation.
Are there any respiratory pathogens that we need to be concerned with?
Well, some producers may have a history of respiratory disease after these calves go out to pasture in the summertime. And so some of them may consider using a Pasteurella vaccine. There's Pasteurella hemolytica and Pasteurella multocida. We've kind of changed the name, so it's a little confusing now. We refer to it as Mannheimia hemolyticum, but in general, think of them as Pasteurella vaccines. The nice thing is that the producer can get these products as single antigen products, or they can get them in combination with viral products. That makes it very convenient.
BQA, or beef quality assurance, it can't be stressed enough. Where does it fit, though, with the calves?
Well, it's a very good point, because no matter how young that calf is, when we start processing them, what we use and how we use it can impact that calf all the way to slaughter. So the producer needs to look at these products, read the label, and whenever possible, choose a subcutaneous route of administration versus an intramuscular route. The other thing that's very important to remember is where we administer these products. We want to give all of our vaccinations in front of that shoulder along the neck of the calf, don't inject anything in the hip or really anything in the rear leg at all.
Pre-breeding vaccinations and parasite control are important. Ahead, we'll learn more about measures you can take for your cows from Fort Dodge Animal Health. We'll be right back.
Keeping your herd healthy means more than protecting your bottom line. It means having pride in what you do. That's why Fort Dodge Animal Health has developed Pyramid 5 and Pyramid 10 with Metastem that provide broad BVD type 1 and 2 protection in combination with IBR, BRSV, and PI3 in Pyramid 5. Plus, protection against 5 strains of lepto with Pyramid 10. At Fort Dodge, we'll take care of protecting your herd so you'll have time for the really important things.
From fresh tomatoes to potatoes and chicken to beef, we're as picky about our quality ingredients as you are. Because that's what we're made of.
Let's head back to Missouri, where Todd McCartney and Dr. Morgan are learning about what health measures are needed to cover your cows and bulls this summer.
Doctor, how do we decide whether to implant these calves, and does it pay?
Well, I think the first thing to do, Todd, is the producer needs to decide, how am I going to market these calves? What's my best options to sell these calves later in the year? And certainly we know there are opportunities for some of these organic or natural branded beef programs. And with those, if the producer is willing to follow some strict protocols, keep good records, not use antibiotics, not use implants, then they may realize some nice premiums next fall when they get rid of those calves. However, having said that, still we need to understand that about 95% of all the calves are still marketed through traditional routes, such as livestock auctions, private contract. And so in those animals, the implants, even in suckling calves, still offer a very nice economic benefit, because a lot of good studies have shown that you'll see a 19+ pound advantage at weaning in those calves that you implant. And that can relate to about a $20 bill per calf.
So it starts with, how am I going to market the calves?
Yes.
Okay. It's springtime, we think of parasite control. Is it important with the calves?
It certainly is, both internal and external in the calves when they go out to pasture, because they're going to be exposed to a lot of parasites, and there again, that's going to rob some profit from us if we're not seeing them at maximum performance. So spring is a good time, good research to show that there's very good benefits to a spring deworming program.
Doctor, you've lined this out real well with the calves. Now let's switch to the cows.
The mama cow, she needs internal and external parasite control for a couple of reasons. Number one, we're thinking about breeding her back here very shortly. So she needs to be gaining weight and doing well, and that way our conception rates are going to be at their maximum. The other thing to consider is that these cows, the adult cows, are the primary source of contamination in the pasture for parasite eggs. And so if we clean those cows up before they go out to summer range, the pastures are cleaner and our calves are exposed to less parasites that way.
Well, and lastly, we can't forget the bulls. What do you want to share with us?
Bulls, sometimes we do forget them, and we don't want to, because now is a good time in the spring. Typically, we've not turned the bulls in yet, so I like to remind producers to have them semen tested. Very good investment in time and money. If you haven't made that appointment with your veterinarian, they need to do that.
Okay.
While we've got them in the chute, we can also screen for reproductive diseases such as trichomoniasis, BVD, those kind of things, as well as don't forget to deworm and vaccinate our bulls also.
Okay. Let's put our arms around it and summarize it all.
Well, in the spring with our calves, it's a good time to castrate, dehorn, brand where appropriate. Think about a clostridial vaccine, perhaps one or more of the viral diseases that we discussed, possibly a pastorella vaccine if they've had some history of respiratory disease. We also want to deworm those calves, and if we're in a setting where we're going to market them through a very traditional route, then implants can be very economically beneficial. For the cows, deworm, consider vaccinating those cows. It's important to vaccinate our cows for reproductive disease before breeding season, 30 to 60 days. Both the Academy of Veterinary Consultants and the National Cattlemen's Beef Association Task Force on BVD recommend that the best time to immunize cows to prevent reproductive loss with BVD is prior to breeding season. So that's another important consideration. And then of course, last but not least, our bulls, get them up, semen test them, vaccinate and deworm them, and get them ready to go.
Well, Doctor, we appreciate your time today. Once again, we got another expert with good advice for us in the springtime. Now back to you, Susie.
It's important to consult your veterinarian when creating your herd health program. For more information on getting your herd ready for summer turnout, go to cattleman2cattleman.org. If you ever miss an episode of NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman or would like to see a segment again, we have a solution for you. Copies of all of our shows are available online at cattleman2cattleman.org. Just click on the link on our homepage. We'll be right back.
Agriculture is a small portion of the population now, and if we're not working together, we're not going to get anywhere.
As our family, we cannot be in Washington, D.C. all the time, and I just couldn't live without NCBA representing.
They're looking out for our interests. They're there fighting for us every day.
If you got 1 cow or 2 cows or 100 cows, you need to be a member.
I'm a member of the NCBA because a long time ago, 35 years ago, I felt that I needed to know more of what my industry is doing. So I got started at the county level. If you're in the cattle industry, now's the time to join and let your voice be heard loud and clear.
You need NCBA working for you, and NCBA needs you. It's easy to join. Just call, get online, or talk with your state affiliate and sign up today.
Welcome back. When more value is found in the beef carcass, it means more money for America's beef producers. Cattleman to Cattleman had the opportunity to check in at Colorado State University to get the latest on what's happening in beef research from Associate Professor John Skanga and U.S. Meat Export Federation Vice President Paul Clayton.
Even though we're in the cattle industry and we raise live cattle, what we're producing as a food product, we're producing beef. And to produce beef, we need to look at the demand for the product, the value of the product, and look for innovative and creative ways and innovative new and creative markets to return more dollars to cattle producers, to beef processors, to beef packers, the whole beef chain. And that's really how we can get to a point where we can become more profitable as an industry, increase demand, increase the dollars that we put in everybody's pocket, and continue to grow the industry. Paul, we've got some products here today in front of us, a lot of different things that we utilize, not just in our domestic market for U.S. consumers, but also globally, different regions of the country, and all of these have different values associated with them.
That's right, John, and I think that's one thing that our industry needs to understand is that we do not sell necessarily carcasses or beef, but we also sell the individual cuts. And a lot of these cuts are dependent upon where the demand is, and various markets throughout the world have different kinds of demand. And we'll see that some of the products, such as over here, probably have greater demand in the international markets, whereas maybe some of these items have greater demand here in the United States. But that is even focuses down a little bit more because these items are probably more into the food service markets rather than in retail, although you'll see these items in the retail market. Of course, here we have the tenderloin, the strip loin. This is a chuck short rib, which is really mostly goes into the international markets, particularly into Asia. And then we have a variety meat, which is a tongue. Although not eaten in the United States to a great extent, there is some consumption of it, but there's much more consumption of that in a lot of our international markets. We have to cut these items to certain specifications. Again, the market will demand what those specifications may be.
I think there's really 2 key messages that we want to leave you with today. The first one of those is there's a whole host of products that are valuable to the beef industry, from variety meats all the way through to muscle cuts. And so it's important as cattle producers that we do a good job in the way we raise cattle so that we can harvest as much of this product as possible. We've got to make sure that we don't condemn our offal products. We have good health programs. We've got to make sure that we put our injection sites in the right spot so that they're not in these saleable products. So we've got to be good cattle producers so that we have these products that are high quality and available to sell in the marketplace.
That's right. The second message I think that you should be aware of is that the international markets play a big role to us, both from what we export and what we import, because they're vital to us, and they actually create value for us. From the export standpoint, we have demand, and you see a lot of that in the news today about how important the international markets are to us, but export is very important because we get a lot of value. The world today is consuming more animal proteins than they ever have, so we should take advantage of that from getting more, to get more value in our products.
The beef checkoff has played an important role in muscle profile research, which led to the development of the beef value cuts. Those cuts include new favorites like the flat iron, the petite tender, and the ranch steak. It's time to celebrate springtime from around the country. Let's take a look at this week's legacy photos. Please keep sending those photos. To do so, head to cattlemantocattleman.org for more information. Thanks for joining us on NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman. Be sure to tune in next week. A new episode airs every Tuesday night at 8:30 Eastern Time right here on RFD TV.